For the first 20 years of my career, I actually was a bridge engineer. I took a lot of that expertise that brought that into the residential space. We've been able to identify a lot of what's wrong out there, what's being done wrong by builders. Well, how do we do it better? How do we help these folks that really need the help? They need the rental income. They need the ADU in their backyard. They need the mom and dad to come live in their home because they can't afford health care at a facility, or their college kid can't get a job after graduating, so they need to come home. There's so many stories. We feel like the best start to even know how to do what you need to do or build what you want to build is to have an authority who's already been in the space, already in the space, and already doing it. Not a CEO, not a COO or CFO or a business run company, but an engineer-led company. Hi, my name is Jonathan with TruHaven, and we're coming to create this podcast because we want to provide an educational and engineering-led solution to this overwhelming topic of ADU construction that is just exploding all over. We want to provide clarity to help you get the confidence you need to know what your next step is. So, first of all, my name is Jonathan Sipe. I'm a structural engineer myself for residential and commercial buildings. I'm a California native and from San Diego. I currently live in Orange County, and not many people who still live in Southern California can say they're California natives, right? So, my wife and I, we love it down here. We've been married for 15 years. We've built a business, an engineering firm. It's called New Beginnings Engineering. We're both co-owners of the company. And so we've had that company for about, I want to say 8 to 10 years now. And we service a community for both residential, commercial buildings, remodels, the ADU space, new homes, and whatnot. So, like I said, I grew up in San Diego. I actually went to college in San Diego. And for the first 20 years of my career, I actually was a bridge engineer. A lot of the infrastructure projects that you all see and folks see out there while you're driving down the road, I actually was a bridge engineer on those projects. I actually used to design bridges as well as oversee the construction of them. And so I've worked all over the country. I've built bridges down in Corpus Christi, Texas to close to the border of New Mexico, Idaho, Colorado. So I've been all over the country within those 20 years. It's been a great opportunity to just serve our infrastructure needs and get that opportunity to build roads, build highways, and build bridges to help people get from one community to the other. I took a lot of pride in that. In fact, I took a lot of that knowledge, I took a lot of that expertise and mantra, we call it, or that duty we have as structural engineers. I brought that into the residential space, right? And so we noticed, and we've still noticed, so many people needing help out there. I always tell people there's always a story behind every client. So, as I spoke earlier, we've created New Beginnings Engineering. I wanted to take a moment really quick and give the meaning behind New Beginnings Engineering. New Beginnings Engineering is a faith-based company. So New Beginnings is actually based off of our personal church, right? Our pastor actually had his own radio show called New Beginnings. And so that's why we created our engineering firm, New Beginnings Engineering, is we wanted to help folks out there that were in need. As we got through and went through a few years of our company and we've helped more and more people, we got into this cold form steel used in a residential capacity. And so we started doing a lot of engineering. We started obtaining and started working with a lot of clients nationally that build the homes. So as the engineering firm, we were their personal structural engineer to build these steel framed homes. We noticed a lot of issues that a lot of the builders were having. A lot of it was centralized around that builder didn't have an engineer in house, hence why they were hiring us. And so we helped a lot of builders, and we still do help a lot of builders in the cold form steel space. But we thought to ourselves, well, we have a lot of people that we help out there. Why can't we help people and we build the homes as well? And that way we can keep the engineering in house. And that's when we launched TruHaven. We launched TruHaven because we wanted to bring a more intimate experience with the homeowner. Being the structural engineer, I always joke with a lot of my clients and sometimes, personal friends. I say, the one person or the one profession within this industry that probably knows all of the good and the bad is actually the engineer that takes care of all of those builders and takes care of all those homeowners. So we've had, unfortunately, but at the same time as a blessing, we've been able to identify a lot of what's wrong out there, what's being done wrong by builders, not intentionally wrong, just sometimes it's a lack of knowledge from the builder, in which we helped inform them. Sometimes it's just certain circumstances out of their control. But we notice all of these things that, like, well, how do we do it better? How do we help these folks that really need the help? They need the rental income. They need the ADU in their backyard. They need the mom and dad to come live in their home because they can't afford, health care at a facility, or, their college kid can't get a job after graduating, so they need to come home. There's so many stories, and all of these stories, it's interesting, we've come across in our engineering company. So, we thought to ourselves, well, why don't we help them from start to beginning? We can be their engineer, but we'll also build the home, build their personal space for them. And then we can have a lot more control, a lot more ability to have the one-on-one connection with the homeowner. See, right now, our connection is through the builder and the builder to the homeowner. So we thought to ourselves, well, we know what's not being done right and we want to do it right. So let's launch TruHaven ADUs and let's be the point of contact for homeowners that need help. So this is very near and dear to me and my wife's heart, to build this company and to launch TruHaven because of all the stories behind it, right? So I can't tell you how many times we actually get phone calls. It happens almost every day, really, that somebody says, hey, a contractor came in here. They promised to do A, B, and C. They didn't get it done. I don't know what to do. Now the city is saying that I need an engineer or I need this. So we come in, we help them. We get a lot of calls that, folks want to build a gym or a yoga studio or their personal office in the backyard. One of my personal friends actually did that because his heart's so big. He's adopted like 5 or 6 kids, but now having his office inside the home is a little challenging, right? 5 or 6 kids running around. So he built his own personal office out back with cold form steel as well. So that's pretty much why we launched TruHaven. We're launching the podcast, and we're very excited about this podcast. We're launching the podcast, and as you can see, it's a little rough in the background. On a transparent note, we set a date to launch this podcast, but at the same time, personally, we moved houses, and our office space isn't quite set up yet. So we're doing our first episode, sort of right here in our new home. But the future episodes, of course, will be in our office. But we wanted to create a podcast because we wanted to be able to communicate to homeowners or potential homeowners out there that need help as well. Of course, social media these days, this is like the best avenue to kind of get our name out there. We also wanted to bring a more educational component as well. We wanted to let people know, hey, these are the resources that are available. This is what it should be like, and not to help people not get taken advantage of. We have a lot of stories of folks being taken advantage of, like I said earlier. And so the biggest gap for homeowners is there's no central authority. There's no central location that let's say my sister wanted to build an ADU in her backyard. There's no website to go to that tells you A, B, C, A to Z what to do. Very similar to like the IRS. We all we all have to pay taxes, right? But local communities throughout the country, nobody knows exactly where to go to start their ADU build or start their new home build or even remodel. And so we wanted to create that podcast, and we want to create that with TruHaven. We want TruHaven to be that authority and education and to help people know from A to Z. You know, I listen to a lot of podcasts for home building. There's a lot of great ones out there. I listen to a lot of engineering podcasts and even ADUs. The ADU podcast, the ADU Instagram and TikToks and Facebook has blown up. I mean, I just scroll and it's all over the place. And it almost is, I'll be honest, I feel like, and maybe other people too, I feel like that social media and people just posting all over about do this, do that is almost sometimes created more complicated of an already current issue. The current issue is there's no centralized place to go. So people are like, well, this guy says to do this guy says to do that. And so what we wanted to do is hone all that in and say, let's take a moment, let's take a breather, and we really want to let people know, no, this is what you need to do. Because we feel like the best start to even know how to do what you need to do or build what you want to build is that have an authority who's already been in the space, already in the space and already doing it. Not a CEO, not a COO or CFO or a business run company, but an engineer led company, right? When it all comes down to it, having an engineer led solution or engineering led builder such as TruHaven, now you have in house the number one most critical component you need to get your ADU or your project off the ground. The difference coming to TruHaven, coming to us, rather than going to an architect or contractor right away, is we actually design every nail, every screw, and everything within your ADU or your personal space. And that's super critical because it needs to be built correctly and built safe, as well as it needs to be permitted. So, GC or a contractor can most certainly and will actually be the person building your personal space ADU, but you need an engineer to build it to the proper codes, or not build it, to engineer it to the proper codes, and of course, get a permit for you so that it's safe. One of the primary obligations as a structural engineer is ensuring the safety of the structure. That is our primary obligation to keep the people safe, keep the public safe. And that's what I did for 20 years as a bridge engineer. I made sure that every bridge was going to be safe because people were driving over it. So I took that very seriously. So I brought that due diligence into the personal ADU space. So, like for example, to try to put an analogy on it, imagine you go and buy a dresser or a bookshelf, an IKEA bookshelf, for example, and you open the book. First of all, they're never written very clearly, right? But anyway, that's besides the point. But you go in there, and it'll say you need 3 screws here. You need 3 screws at the end of the shelf. You need to put the backing on and put the nails here, here, here. So all those locations for the screws and those nails to hold the bookcase together, we do that. The engineer calls all those out for your ADU. So while you can get an architect, and what an architect will do is design what your ADU looks for, which we do that as well. We have in-house architects. The engineer is a super critical part because we're the ones that call out all the bolts. On a side note, I'm sure I see a lot of Instagram posts. It's kind of funny where people actually try to build those things, and when they're done, it just like collapses. And so if you didn't have an engineer, your ADU would just collapse. So that's where we come in. I think there's a real socioeconomic issue going on nationally, right? We have a housing crisis. We all watch the news, and I'm sure every 3 days we hear something about the housing crisis on the news. And so the ADU space, the market for ADUs has really increased. A lot of states are incorporating new laws. Obviously, California, we have ADU laws that the legislature, from what it looks like in Northern California, is going to extend out the ability for you all to put an ADU in your backyard. But other states are starting to pick up as well, like Arizona has recently passed a law. Colorado is passing their own ADU laws this summer, actually, for people to put an ADU on their property. And the reason for that is, housing is increasingly becoming expensive. We all know that. I think every time we turn the news, the nightly news on, like the median price of the home just jumped, 200%. You're like, wait a minute, it was just this like last week. So the ability to build little private ADUs, to bring your family within. So we see that a lot. We see a lot of, like I said earlier, we see a lot of college graduates, that can't get a job. So there's a job market that's kind of intertwined with the job market, right? So folks are coming out of college, and we get this all the time too, because candidates call us. We interview new candidates to work at our firm, and of course, the number one thing that jobs are really pound into, our kids and new graduates is like, where is your 5 years experience? So all these new graduates are coming out of college and like, man, I can't get my 5 years. I can't get my 5 years. So they're fighting to get a job, and at the same time, they need a place to live. And of course, mom and dad, as soon as they went off to college, hey man, I turned that into a pool room. You're not coming back in my house, so you're going in the backyard, right? So obviously the whole college, and of course, we have stories that we encounter with elderly people. So you have the inability to find work for some folks, which then creates its own housing needs. You have the increased in retirement healthcare or retirement housing that's creating an increase in housing need. There's already a housing shortage. So not only do you already have a housing shortage, but you have a lot of other topical and external things going on in our world right now that are creating the solution of having an ADU in the backyard. So that's what we're seeing, and we're just seeing a massive influx of that. We have a lot of people that come to us for the socioeconomic purpose of using ADUs or this extra personal space for rental income, for additional income. In fact, we just recently went to a person's home in San Diego, and he wants to build an ADU in the backyard for his wife. Actually, it was actually a surprising story because these are more of the rare that we hear these. He wanted to build an ADU for his wife as rental income so that when he's gone, his wife can still stay in the home, have rental income to help pay for the mortgage. So obviously this is an investment opportunity because the laws also are allowing for folks, and a lot of realtors are doing this, a lot of flipper floppers are doing it. You see it on HGTV a lot. You actually can go and buy a lot that has a single family home already on it. You can split the lot or split the home, and then since we have an ADU law, and some counties actually let you build two ADUs. We're doing that right now up in the Los Angeles area. We're actually building two ADUs on a lot that already has a home. So now folks are buying a lot with a home, they're splitting it, making a duplex, and then putting two ADUs on the lot. And next thing you know, for that one home, you might have a mortgage of $3,000, but you're renting each livable space out for $2,000. So, a lot of folks are really diving into that. And the great thing about the ADU laws out there too is I know there's a lot of negative stigma too, like we're adding densification, it's going to get too crowded. But if you really read into the ADU laws, there are criteria that not discourages, but it doesn't allow that to happen. I think one of them is, if somebody does do it on their lots, I think the next door neighbor can't do it. So it's one of those things. There are laws out there to prevent that over densification. I always joke with my friend about this because it's like, well, if your neighbor does it and you don't, shoot, So there's always that. But yeah, it's a great rental passive income opportunity for folks. So the great thing about a TruHaven ADU is the fact that you don't have to do an addition on your home. A lot of folks we run into, the number one question, honestly, or at least one of the top three questions is, can I still live in my home while you do this big renovation on my house? And so a lot of times you can't live in your home. So a lot of people get displaced to a hotel, and then they're at the mercy or at the discretion of the contractor for him to finish when they want to finish. So the great thing about a TruHaven ADU is not just you have extra space, an office, a yoga, a gym, or even just hang out in the backyard like a man cave, but it still allows the family who's already living there to not be disrupted. The other thing with that is a TruHaven, we have a steel kit, right? So the TruHaven ADUs and the personal spaces that we provide is what's called steel frame panelization. It's not modular, because that's a whole new mantra coming out right on TikTok and Instagram. You'll see out there, oh, a new modular space, just buy a whole unit and put it in your backyard. And that'll be another podcast. We'll talk about that. But no, this is just a steel frame. So instead of wood framing ADU or personal space, it's all out of steel. The great thing about our system is the speed of construction. So a lot of times, as you can imagine, as you've seen any kind of construction throughout your community, you see framers out there. They're all framing individual 2x4s, and it could take forever. You see wood frames. Sometimes they'll go by and like, wow, they're still framing up wood. So with our steel panelization, you get steel frames delivered to your house, and we can erect a whole home, a whole personal space ADU in one day. So I know that it seems a little Like, wow, really, Jonathan? One day? And like, yeah, one day. So not only are we eliminating the disruption to your main home, so you don't have to do an addition to your home, not to mention it's very costly. Really quick, what I'll say about that is the reason an addition to your home can be much more costly is you're not only paying for the space that you're adding, but more often than not, and thanks to us structural engineers, this happens, you need to reinforce your existing home. So keep that in mind if you're thinking to yourself, I'm just going to add a room on the backyard. It's only 100 square feet. I don't need a whole kit in my backyard taking up my back space. Keep in mind, even though you add on 100 square feet, we have to reinforce the rest of the home. What that means is tearing up some drywall, adding some new plywood, tearing up. So it can be a much more involved process than just the cost of building your 100 square foot add-on. So that's why it's so great about TruHaven ADU. Not only do we put it in your backyard, but it's steel and it also gets erected in one day. You know, one of the great benefits about our product, about TruHaven Personal Space or ADU, is its accessibility and its ability that if you have, a screwdriver, power drill, you've got some basic hands-on skill, you can erect it yourself. The reason I know this is because we wanted to create a product that I myself actually have gone out and built. And so we actually did our own proof of concept. Myself, my team, our steel manufacturer, we're all US based, US folks, it's US made and assembled. But we went out and we built our own four small ADU and personal spaces because I wanted to, if I was going to provide my customer, my client being you, a TruHaven personal space or ADU, if I can't put it together, you know, how are some folks going to be able to put it together? So we wanted to make it accessible for our customers. That if you have some DIY skills, it doesn't take long. The panels are manageable. I know you think wall panels. I'm like, wait a minute, how do I erect the wall panels? Like, well, I was out there. And what I can say on a transparent note, I am 6'4", but I'm not that strong. I'm a little chunky, so I'm a little out of shape, but I was still able to lift the panels. The panels are not that heavy. It's light gauge steel. It's lightweight steel. Keep in mind these kits are what's called cold form steel, but it's the reason it's called light gauge is it's lightweight. So the ability to erect it, you get a power driver, you put the screws in. It comes with a full instructional booklet, as well as we have some training videos that we'll send you as well that kind of be like, okay, this is how you're going to erect the walls. How do you attach it to your foundation? So that was a super critical component of our launch. And actually, one of the things that we noticed with builders out there is we had a lot of general contractors when they had their own product calling us to help them to build them. Like, wait a minute, how does that work? So that's one of the biggest benefits of this is your ability. If you want to take your son, I have a personal friend. He actually took his son in his backyard. They did it as a kit project. So if you want an extra little personal space out there, you can do it over weekends, and it's a great bonding opportunity too. The stories that we're going to bring to you and the future podcast that we want to touch on is how our product not only enhances folks' lives from whether they need a home office or just some extra space, but also a lot of people truly impacted and need a solution, need a viable solution. For example, the burn areas. We recently have been contacted by folks out in the Maui area. Even though Maui happened years ago, we're actually helping out in the Maui burn area. The Altadena area, the Eaton fire, we actually, this year, will be erecting 2 of our TruHaven steel frame homes. And so we'll bring more of that onto you. There's a lot of folks, there's one family, I'll touch on it real briefly. There's one family that lot is permitted for them to have their business. How they make money is strictly permitted by the lot. So they can't go rent a home and run their business out of it. It doesn't work that way for them. They have to be in the lot. So the need to expeditiously get the home rebuilt, which our panelization, steel frame does, but also they want a solution that's fireproof and termite resistant and all that. So we'll bring you more and more of these stories. Like I said, one of the number one things that I wanted to do with TruHaven is to create a company for the people out there, to help them be an authority, to give them what they need so they can rest easy. I'll share a little bit too on a couple really quick. We had a phone call the other day of a lady that was very frantic. She needed to get an ADU. She didn't know where to start. She actually asked me, do I call an architect? Do I call a builder? Do I go to the building department? What do I do? At the end of the call, she actually thanked us and said, Jonathan, I'm so thankful we ran into TruHaven, ran into you guys, because now I'm comfortable that you guys have it handled. I don't need to worry about anything. And I'm not making that story up. That's actually a real story. So it made us feel good because it means, okay, what we're doing works and it's going to work and it's going to keep working to help people like you out there. Some of the guests that we're excited to have on that we're going to interview are builders themselves, folks that are in the space of rebuilding homes in fire burn areas. We're actually going to interview some of the manufacturers that make the homes. You're going to learn everything about our company from A to Z. You're going to see how we make the frames. You're going to hear from people that make the frames, hear from folks that build the frames. You're going to hear the stories of folks that have bought it, as well as we're going to have a lot of other folks that they themselves are ADU specialists. Since this is a true, ADU company, a personal space, we want to interview a lot of folks that have authority too. But we're trying to centralize all that, right? We want to be an authority to help you guys get all that information collected. So we're going to have a lot of guest speakers that help give you the information you need. Probably one of the things that most folks ask is, well, where do I find more information? If you go to mytruhaven.com, that's where we're located. That's our website. There's a contact us, or you can even schedule a one-on-one, call or meeting. Every one of our staff is locally based here. We don't sub any of these calls out of the country. I like to keep in touch with the homeowners. So you're not gonna go to our mytruhaven.com, click schedule a meeting, and then we just brush you off, right? This is a very dear product to myself and my family. And so I will always keep my hand. So you might get lucky and get me on the phone, but definitely go check us out. There's also an FAQ page that we've set up with some of the most common questions that folks have about where do I start? What's the cost? So definitely go there. We actually have about 2 to 3 minute video on the homepage. I encourage you to watch that. It's very quick, but it gives a good overview of my TruHaven and what we're about, what we built, and how it can help you. So definitely explore the websites, click that link, schedule a time to talk to us. We even have a phone number on there. You can find me on Instagram as well. Feel free to reach out to me personally. You can DM me. I don't have a team that answers my DMs or anything, so you're talking right to me. So feel free to contact me. The vision I have for this company, the future of it, what I would love for it to do, what I would love for it to be, is purely helping people. I want to enhance people's lives. I want to de-stress people's lives. Life is stressful. Life is full. Life is busy. And so if we can provide a personal space that allows you or a loved one to take a moment and breathe, then I've created something that I love and created something I've always wanted to create. So this is an important mission for me. I really want to create a company that helps people. On a side note, on a very, very transparent personal note, we've all made mistakes in our life, right? We all have regrets in our life. And so what I want the second half of my life to be is to go out and help people and make their lives better. If you've liked what you've heard so far, like and subscribe down below and join us on this journey. The journey to not only create a personal space for folks, but to actually be that authority that rises above the chatter that we're all hearing out there and help give you the confidence to move forward on whatever project it may be, whether it's a personal space with TruHaven or an ADU.